Hello, welcome to Empowered Survivors TV. Thank you for joining me. I'm Rebecca Solwers, your host for today. Empowered Survivors TV is about sharing stories of survivors of child sexual abuse. We are here to share that space for healing, to raise awareness around child sexual abuse, that the reality is it is happening today, and that there are children out there who are not being heard, that there are survivors out there who have not had the opportunity to speak, to be heard, or to heal. So here we are also about community, creating connection so that each survivor knows that they are not alone, and that connection, that we understand the everyday struggles, that we understand and we hold that space where we can all be united and share to heal and empower others to speak up. So today I welcome the beautiful Kristina Savka. Kristina is a signature stylist. She's a signature style strategist and confidence coach, empowering women to create a high-end signature style brand. She has dedicated the last 3 decades supporting and empowering some of the most established and well-known leaders in their field to amplify their visibility, confidence, and impact. Kristina believes that when intelligent style and a magnetic presence unite, you can amplify your personal brand and create magnificent impact instantly. Kristina invites you to take her hand and together choose to refine your presence, restyle your brand, represent your best self, and rise into a powerful, visionary leader and become the amplified woman. So welcome, Kristina. Thank you so much for, choosing to be a guest here and sharing your story. You are an amazing woman, and you have obviously have gone from your story of experiencing child sexual abuse to being the woman you are today and helping others. So today I really want to welcome you into the space of vulnerability and of sharing and connecting with those who may be watching, who will be watching, and will just receive the message that you are here to share with us today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome and brilliant introduction. Thank you.
Thanks. Please, Kristina, now can you share with us, so we know who you are and where you are today. What we want to do is we want to go back to the young little Kristina, and what you enjoyed doing, and who were you? What was Kristina about? What did you love doing? What made you you?
How far do you want to go back?
Oh, let's
5 decades.
Let's go to the beginning. So the elephant in the room, it's obvious that you've experienced child sexual abuse. So what I want to journey into is the Kristina before. Is that do you have memories of before?
Well, the abuse basically happened very early in my life. So I guess I have very small fragments of anything beautiful. So I could tell you that the reason why I chose the profession that I have today is that this is where I found beauty. This is where I found my solace, because there wasn't much of that growing up. As early as the age of 3, I had already started to, experience trauma in the home by quite a violent father, who coincidentally didn't last very long in our family. So we were a separated family from quite a young age. But, as a very young family coming to this country in 1970, we were, a very typical prey for people that saw an opportunity to manipulate and to take under their wing a young family. My parents were only 20, and the pedophile in our community was only, I think 15 years my parents' senior. So it was a great setup to say, hey, let me show you the ropes. Let me show you about town, and let me basically be your guide and your mentor in life. And my parents gladly took that on board because they were so young, 20 years old with a 1-year-old child. Life was pretty scary on the other side of the globe. They had to learn a new language. They had to immerse in a new culture. There was no family. There was nothing. We were literally left to our own devices. So it was a golden opportunity for a very sick and twisted mind to take advantage of that. And so my parents at this stage, when we did encounter this particular person in our community, they were already weighed down with the pressures of raising 3 children and having to navigate this new culture. And so, they would say, oh, let us babysit this child. You have 3. Let's just take the pressure off you. And therein laid that, the foundation of what was to become a nightmare for the next 10 years, because that was a pretty long journey. Now, because it was connected to a religious organization, there was a lot of fear in sharing, such atrocities that would bring down the system, the religious system. There were, people in power and position, and they were connected. So the last thing in those days, which was back in the 70s, nobody really believed a child. You must remember, we came out of an era where children were seen and not heard. Yes, that truly did exist in my lifetime. And we've come a very long way since then. And so you can imagine from generation to generation passing down that style of parenting. It was no wonder that instead of alarm bells going off, it was like, oh, you silly girl, that's not really happening. And so you learn to basically absorb the impact and find a way to survive. Now, I know that there are many people in this world, they get to pretty much my age, and they've been carrying the burden for so long and they just can't do it anymore. I can truly understand why they would choose suicide. But growing up with a mother who became dependent on pharmaceutical drugs, who was misdiagnosed instead of situational depression, they diagnosed her for clinical depression, which meant that we had no care and support. My mother was literally bombed out on these pharmaceutical drugs, so we were left to raise ourselves. And so the nightmare, it was literally year after year. You don't know what you don't know when you're living in the nightmare. It isn't until you come out and you become an adult, you start, working in other environments, meeting other people, getting friends, seeing how they grew up, that you start to realize, hey, that wasn't normal. And that's when, you start to figure out, well, how do I survive? What do I do? But when you're so young, you don't really understand all these details. So you choose things that will basically help you get up and do the job of living. Whether it's good or bad, this is what you do. And this is what I did as well, until I came to the ripe old age of, I think it was 36. And I said to myself, now that I have children, who do I have to be to show up for them? So, yes.
That's amazing, Kristina, because that's like such a powerful awareness to be able to, to be able to observe and identify that, wait, this isn't normal, to, still coping the best way that you could with what has happened. And then realizing, okay, I'm a mom, like things have to change. And, the sad thing is that, yes, it sometimes doesn't happen for some, but there is such strength in that, obviously, for you to be able to pull yourself into that, I guess, into that being of being. How do I need to be? Who do I need to be? What do I need to be able to be the mother at 36 that my children need. So, that's congratulations to you. Like, that's amazing, because it is like a mountain. I'm like envisioning like a mountain, it's a mountain, and you have to climb it to become to become aware of what is the reality, what is happening, and to kind of get out of self, in that way of that suffering, get out of the suffering to be able to see what are the options. So, that your story is amazing, and it just, thank you for sharing. You share so eloquently and just so beautifully. You are such a great storyteller. I always love watching your videos and hearing you speak, because you do share so beautifully, and bring us into those, and through your life. And I was able to feel what that felt like, in that vulnerability for your parents, of, as you said, just moving to a different country and not having connection. And I think that when we're looking at those who have experienced child sexual abuse, there is always that vulnerability will show up one way or another in our lives, of why we do befriend, why our parents have befriended, why they allowed. And when I say allow, I mean they weren't aware. And, as you did say, that with the children should not be heard. They can be seen, but not heard. Yes, that is such a big thing. And now it is about telling our truth and speaking up and sharing our stories. So, as you said, so what were the things, what was your biggest challenge? So you got to 36, you're like, okay, I need to do this. What did you find was your biggest challenge, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, that you had to overcome? And what did it look like in your everyday, from transitioning from where you were to, like, okay, I need to change?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because I got to this point, I think it was at the breakdown of my first marriage, and coincidentally, children of abuse, they make some crazy choices in life. I guess we try and escape, and we want to go somewhere where we want to say, am I okay in your world? Will you love me and accept me? And unfortunately, we actually find people that are probably just as damaged as us, or maybe even worse, and they can't help us. We're coming from the wrong space. And so when this had started to all dissipate in my life, at a very young age, I'm actually quite surprised, because I had enough wisdom to walk into bookshops and wanted to buy books that I could start to unpack and discover what happened to me. If nobody else will listen to me, perhaps I might read other stories or understand psychology. What was the mindset? I really, got into, how does a criminal think? What do they do? I loved all that whole, Nancy Drew, figuring out, because it's not like, it's like the anger was suppressed, but I had a burning desire to know. I'm a learner. I'm a natural born learner. So I have a thirst for knowledge. And whilst I knew I couldn't stop what had happened and I couldn't change it, but my goodness, I was definitely going to do anything I can to figure out why. And so I can tell you, I guess it's been about 35 years or so, I have so much psychological knowledge in my head from reading all these books and doing the courses that have helped me with my clients and speaking to them, understanding them. Literally, they tell me one sentence, I can almost figure out the rest of the story, because in our humanity, there are so many similarities. And once you've done the study, you can't unlearn this stuff. And so I really started to get myself. Now, I started to get also, who are my parents? What did they experience? I went back another generation. Who are my grandparents who raised my parents, that then made the choices that they did? And then why didn't they see the signs? What happened to them? And coincidentally, they were both abused in their own ways, not sexually, but it would have been mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. There were elements of abuse. Now, I have learnt that in a lifetime, there are 5 different types of abuses that you can experience: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial. If you've had, unfortunately, there's the most unfortunate is if you've experienced all 5. I've been there. I have had all 5. My parents necessarily didn't have all 5, but there were elements of abuse that had set them up to be the person that they are today. And so,
perfect. Yeah.
yes.
So you were able to identify that generational cycle. And
yes.
And do you find that when you were exploring, and I think that this is to point out the similarities, and something that we survivors can go through, is that because there was that space of not feeling safe, not feeling in control, we wanted to understand. So that way we were aware. And obviously, that's my experience, and what I've, working with survivors, that's what we've identified, is that I want to understand why, because it's understanding that it wasn't us. So if it wasn't us, then why was it? Let's understand the mindset, so that way we can be aware. So that way, if it does come up again, we'll be able to identify it straight away. So did you find that consumption and that knowledge, once as you said, once you can't get rid of it. So it can kind of sometimes be quite just there all the time, that there almost becomes like this shield, this protection, another layer of protection on ourselves, of going, I am going to identify first. I'm going to screen this person as they're coming in, what they're saying, their body language, what is their agenda, what is their, that we do screen them. And that sometimes I have found can be quite, it just takes away our ability to ease and to just be. It's fantastic. I'm not saying for nobody to do it, but have you found that to be sometimes just a bit always taking that precedence, and it can be quite overwhelming, instead of just simply being able to just connect and to love? Like, if the child sexual abuse did not happen, would there be that opportunity to just connect openly, and as we are meant to as humans?
That's a very interesting question. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, I know, but it's just something to explore, isn't it?
That's a very interesting question. Look, one thing, we're all different. I want to share, like, I watched, and coincidentally, I wasn't the only child in my family that this had happened to.
Yeah.
And I had watched this happen also to my siblings as well. And we're all different people. So what I found was my sibling had chosen self-destruction, refused to learn, and had gone down that path. I watched my mother fold and collapse into depression. I watched my father mood alter and, do his own crazy stuff. I watched my brother lose his life at 17. And I said to myself, I am not that person. There's got to be a better way, hence the journey of this self-discovery. But I was still quite young, not understanding.
Yeah.
When I stand back and I look back at the whole thing, I guess the biggest thing that I had learned was forgiving the other party, not because it lets them off the hook, but it lets me off the hook. And the greatest trap that a lot of us fall into as victims is blame. I learned that blame serves nothing. And once I really embodied that, I was released and I had such amazing freedom. Now, being raised in a religious institution, even though that is where the atrocities had occurred, it was something that I clung to for hope. I know it's not everyone's answer, but it was for me. And so, interestingly enough, like I didn't do well at school because I had so much emotional turmoil. But there were two subjects, funnily enough, I got straight A's in: theology and textiles. And, I guess not being able to share and experience, that whole unleashing of what had happened to me, I chose textiles over ministry in my life at that time because it was a tool that I could use to hide. And my mother, having experienced trauma and was very good at her craft, it showed me the way. So I took what she was doing and I went to the next level. This is how I ended up in my chosen profession. Yeah. When I did a course about 15, 16 years ago called Landmark Education, it showed me exactly why we choose the professions we do, that are directly correlated to our life and what had happened to us. And it was no rocket science that I'd chosen a profession that would cleverly give me the tools to hide myself, to reinvent myself and who I am. Now, it's taken over 45 years to finally release that story in a chapter, in a co-collaboration book that was released on International Women's Day called Inspiring Women Today. And I have titled the chapter Out of Hiding. It was kind of like my way to show the reader the things that I've gone through and how those things have led me to where I am today. And no matter how good or bad the situation, there was always going to be an outcome that was going to serve me. Why? Because I chose life and not suicide. I chose that shame wasn't going to be greater than me. I chose that my greater purpose and my mission for being born alive was going to be greater than what had happened to me. And so this had all been in the working, in the making, that I didn't quite understand as a young person. But because I'd used fashion for so long and I used it so well and I became really good at it, became quite sought after for the things that I could achieve for people, I quickly learned after having children that those are the very things that were no longer going to serve me because I couldn't do those things after having children. I didn't have the time. And finally, I looked in the mirror and I said, who are you? What's happened? And what are you here to do? And the first mission field for me were those children. Therein started the journey of what will you teach them about survival? What will you teach them about resilience? Because you yourself have gone through something and went and got to the other side. And so this was then a real awakening where I suddenly saw that my children were the career change, and that all the invested energy that I used to put into clients in my work was now to be shifted over into these beings. So I did that. And then I got to a point where they were, getting a little bit older, and I started to come back into the sphere of, offering my services again to others. And what I noticed that coming back into that arena was like this incredible version of myself, so new, so improved. No longer was it just about giving them the right colors and the styles and the cuts and the whole performance thing. It was about asking them about their soul. Who is the person going to be wearing this? Who is the person going to be performing whatever they're doing, whether it be stage or camera work? We got to the core of that first, so that who they were was going to shine greater than the outfit that I would actually wrap them around in. I wanted to explain to them that the clothing, the makeup, the hair were just tools of enhancement, but they weren't them. And I could never have done this prior because I was using it myself to hide. But with children, there was no more hiding. And so there started this new depth, this new level that had emerged of who is Kristina. Yeah. And so, this is why I can stand, with my head high and saying, I've arrived at a point where no one else's opinion matters. There is no shame in what had happened to me because I couldn't control it and I wasn't able to do anything about it. I was 5 years old. And so therefore, you release the people that didn't know better, like 20-year-old parents. You release them. You release the person that was so mentally deranged that they didn't realize what they were doing to destroy another human's life and the potential of life. And you say to yourself, what am I going to do today? And so even though I didn't choose ministry when I was young and I chose textiles for obvious reasons, now I merge the two. I do the both. I have a personal ministry to humanity to give them hope that they can survive, and to also then use my learned expertise within the fashion industry and all of the incredible accumulated skills over the last 3.5 decades to offer that to the public as well as looking after them internally, emotionally, and mentally while they're in my presence. So, it's been an incredible journey for me. But that is my mission today.
That's beautiful, Kristina, because it's like coming back to full circle. And what keeps coming up for me to ask you is if you are to identify, without the garments and without everything else, I guess how we both love our, putting on our beautiful blazers and our jewelry, and and because it is part of our essence, our feminine, and it is, and who doesn't like to get their hair, but we understand the importance of knowing that it isn't part of our worth. It isn't what we need to feel worthy. So we have that similar walk in that, which is huge, because there are many who will cover up because of the guilt and the shame and the hurt, and that not feeling worthy enough or good enough, and that if they're discovered, if the truth is discovered, that they will be either left standing alone. They wouldn't have the job, they wouldn't have the title, they wouldn't have the family, they wouldn't have, all that they worked hard for, that there is that sense of fear and vulnerability of losing the people who are there. So thank you for sharing that. And if you were to, in words, share who Kristina is, going back into the heart of self, of your little self, what words would your little Kristina say? And I'm sure she would be just as, eloquent with her words and storytelling and being so curious. But what words would she use to describe you as you have always been to where you are today?
Goodness me. Well, it's very clear I'm a natural born fighter. I will not go down. As much as I was inquisitive, I guess I was always looking for the solution, trying to make things right. Now, interestingly enough, from a psychological perspective, even though I had those personality traits, in an abused situation, they're the very things that create rescuers in us. Now, if you do the research and the knowledge and the study, you'll understand that by being a rescuer, it is not a balanced way to be. You're always saving someone. And a lot of the time, depending on the propensity of the abuse, what ends up happening is that you put others' needs ahead of your own, and sometimes to the detriment of your physical and mental health, where you are once again being abused in another cycle in an adult fashion, right? In an adult way, because you've attracted that into your life. And so as much as I was inquisitive and a learner and a fighter and a go-getter and an achiever, I learned that these were the things that I chose to survive. Now, let me unpack something for you here. This is quite interesting. All abused children choose what they call a drug of choice, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whether it be pornography, whether it be food, whether it be entertainment, whatever it is, something to mood alter. Once you do the study and the research and you start to identify where you're at, this is where your healing can start to come in place. You can start to say, okay, this is who I have become in my adult relationships. These are the things, these are like the consequences of what had happened to me. And you start to make different choices about how you are going to be in the adult world, because as children, we didn't really have a choice. And what I often say is we were set up, right? We were set up for the life that was to come. But as adults, we have the choice. How are we going to play out the rest of our lives with what had happened to us? And I said to myself, I refuse for this to get me down. I refuse to be a victim of, narcotics or something to mood alter. And funnily enough, when I did try alcohol in my teens, I was like the odd one out. I hated not feeling in control. And I guess it took me back to when the pedophile was having their way. I didn't have control. Yeah. And so I guess I needed to have that sense of control. And, a lot of the times my family will say, oh, you escaped, you're doing so well. And I said, no. At that point, I was chasing, fame, money, fortune. I became a workaholic, no balance. Just because, you're not seen as a drug addict or a alcohol addict, whatever it is, it doesn't mean that it isn't the same propensity. It is still the same. Stress is going to kill you just as much as anything else. Yeah.
Exactly. It's an addiction.
And so I started to recognize, yes. And so these are the little unpacking things that occurred over time where you recognize none of this would have happened had I not gone on a self journey of discovery. Yeah. Because if I look at my siblings, they put their head in the sand. Life is too bad. I don't want to know. I have to numb this pain. For me, it was like, I need to know so I can get on top of this and succeed, whatever this thing was that was going to consume me. So different personalities. And, and I do meet a lot of people that come, into my studio that I work with online and offline. And I can see how much mental anguish abused victims have, where they really haven't figured out, either they haven't been shown the way, or maybe genetically they don't have that, tenacity, personality, just, no judgment. It's just how they are. And you can really see them suffering. And so what I do is I plant seeds and then I let them go and do their own, research. And I just put them on this journey. I show them the way. I explain things. Sometimes I'll go into depth, but I plant the seed and then there's no attachment to the outcome. Let them be. Yeah. I think one of the greatest things for me also was that I connected with a divine power. Yeah. Because if I didn't have this divine connection, I would have been consumed. Because when abuse goes on, year after year after year, and we know that it takes, 21 days to form a new habit, another 7 days to solidify that. That's a month. Now you look at 10 years. Who would that child have had to become in 10 years
to survive?
I literally ran away from the institution at 15. I couldn't wait to get away. Even though I wasn't 18, I still felt a sense of power that, hey, you can't do this to me anymore. I'm getting out, And so, for me, it was about knowledge is power. I learned that statement and I ran with it. Yeah. I ran with it until I got to a safe haven. And there I unpacked and put my burden to the side. I knew it wasn't going to go away in a hurry. I put it to the side there, but I knew I was safe. And now I was like, okay, now what will I do? Yeah. Because shame, it's like a dirty thing. You just can't get rid of it,
as much as
in a conventional way.
As much as you scrub
and that is why
use bleach, it's not going to come off. So it literally is.
And that is exactly right. And that is why enter in this divine connection and force that I connected with. Mm-hmm. And then I started to change the saying. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Instead of saying, who am I? Which is when you've got a lot of shame, it's like, who am I to deserve this? Who am I to have that? Who am I? And you start really hating on yourself.
Yes.
I changed the language and I said, whose am I?
Yeah.
And then I said, whose I am? I am from the divine source.
Yeah.
And I am worthy.
That's
So I
exactly
changed the language. I just added the S in there.
powerful.
Not who am I?
It's whose
Whose
am I?
am I?
And
It's revolutionary.
yeah, and it's so beautiful. And I think that's the reason why I'm getting this message. So I'm obviously, you know me, we're very divine, we have that connection, and nobody can take that away from us, and nobody can interpret it for us, because we have walked the walk that we have experienced. And then we have found our creator, our divine, for me, that's God. And it's knowing how he sees, and I think that that's where that question came up for you, was just that, how do you see yourself? And I guess it's that him, how does God see you? If you were to place them into words, what do you believe that you are seeing through his eyes? And that's where that question was earlier.
Yes,
You said
absolutely.
you're
Yes,
a
yes.
fighter, you're inquisitive, you're somebody who finds solutions, and I so relate with that. But I think that I was getting that message of, who are you in his eyes? So
Yes, well, now it's like I've arrived at this point where people's judgments have no value, and really, they're not even my business.
no, right.
If
Exactly.
I don't think like that, it really doesn't matter. There'll
Absolutely.
always be someone that hates you. And one of the things that I teach my children
And
is,
it's such
when
a shame.
yeah, I always say, if someone's sad, mad, angry, whatever they're going through, and then they lash out, it is always a projection, because happy people don't do that. When
Yeah,
you're happy, you want everyone to be happy, and the world
absolutely.
feels amazing.
You just want to
And
love
so,
them.
yes. And so when you really get that knowledge, it can't affect you. And so I got to this point in my life where I was okay being me, regardless of what anybody said. And I love that we are in an age now, especially working in an online space, where real, raw, authentic, transparent, these are trendy words, and I really believe they're not going away.
No.
So in actual fact, the world has made it okay to share. The world has made it like a no judgment place. Yes, you're still going to get trolls. But this is what I often say. If you get someone who is judging your journey or what you're sharing, chances are they are not feeling good inside. If you really start to have a paradigm shift around that, unhappy people share their unhappiness that way, it will wash over you so easily. When you're young, you absorb it all. Really? I'm like that? You think that way of me? And it really gets to you, and you start being sad. Sometimes you cry, or sometimes you get self-destructive, and you really take it on board that, how could they possibly think this way of me? Because you don't understand the psychology. And this is why I say, read the books, listen to the podcast, really get into the professionals who have studied, the human mind and the psyche, and then connect to your higher power and figure out your identity and your worth. And people, those trolls, the negative, the naysayers, they will just wash off, because you have a mighty shield around you.
Absolutely.
And nothing can penetrate that shield when you really get that this is a divine shield that no human hand could ever penetrate or destroy.
And take away.
That is really the essence of a true survivor. Get to that place. This is my mission, to help others get to that place. Because, funnily enough, I ended up with 3 boys. I always thought I was going to have some girls. I can pass on my fashion expertise too. But I have these boys, and I look at society and I'm thinking, why do boys between the ages of 18 and 24 just drop like flies? They choose suicide. They can't cope. They don't have resilience. Things are overwhelming. And that's when I realized I've got a job to do. I'm battling against the standards of this world today and the messages that are portrayed onto young people. And I say to myself, who do I have to be to influence and train and raise the next generation to be greater than the powers around them that will see, that they will actually, see to it to bring them down? And so I say to myself, this is my ministry. This is my calling, to use things that I've overcome and to give that hope to the next generation. And boys, they They don't express like girls. They're very different. They hold things to their chest,
Absolutely.
And, there are people that'll just, put their head in the sand and not deal with the issues. But as a survivor, you are always connected to that darker side of life. Because once you've been exposed to things way beyond your age, like to be exposed to sexual practices and behavior from the age of 5, nothing compares you. But it destroyed an innocence far greater than the perpetrator would ever even understand. And I often say, this is where the compassion comes in. Compassion for yourself is, if the perpetrator could do that to a child and have no conscience, what happened to that perpetrator when they were a child? It is cyclical.
Exactly. Because
it is somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And somewhere I say to myself,
yeah.
Yes. And the greatest thing that you can do as a survivor is to practice the art of compassion, because the bitterness will eat you up so much. It'll, as I said, drive you to suicide, addiction, distraction. It'll drive you to these things. So to flip it around, when you connect to a higher power, which is the divine source of love, the ultimate love is the divine source of power, you cannot but just transmit compassion. Exactly. Because love and compassion go hand in hand. So if you do not have a divine connection, you will fall victim to the other stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, check out the newspapers of the tragedies, check out your community of those suffering, open your eyes and see there are people in need and that are suffering today. So we that have survived, that have the knowledge, we are the ones that must show compassion, even to the point of the perpetrator, not excusing it, but releasing them from my, the grip on my life. That's the message that I want to get out there today.
That's beautiful, Kristina, because it's exactly right. Because without compassion, we cannot see our true selves. We cannot forgive. We cannot, we don't have that empathy. And if we don't have that for ourselves, how can we give it to others? So the first and foremost, it's knowing that we have that right. It is our right to receive that. Like it is there, it's free for us to receive and to be aware of. And the other thing is, as you were saying, the thing is, when as a child, we don't feel we have choice. And so that's the biggest thing, is when we are adults and we are suffering, it's understanding. And it's funny because as I injured my back 2 weeks ago, I started writing the book, The Art of Suffering, and how we can embody and carry suffering ongoing. And it could be suffering is inevitable. It's, in one way or another, we will suffer, whether it's back injury, whether it's a car accident, whether it's a loss of a loved one, there is that hurt. And if we stay in that suffering, it will somehow come out in the shape, in a shape or a form, whether it's in our body, our language, the way we dress, the people we hang out with, the mindset, it just morphs and it shows externally. And I think that what's really important is to know that, as you said, go and learn. It's really important to read, to listen, to know that we are worthy and able. As adults, we can choose to start to heal. And it is that choice, making that conscious choice that, okay, I am tired of staying in suffering. I will experience that suffer, but then I'm not going to continue suffering. And it's separating that. And it's just so important to empower, knowing that we have choice. As you said, it's big, but I love how you use the word tenacity, because I think that is a word it's something that is who we are. We are tenacious beings. After the suffering, we have kept going. We didn't just sit with it and stay within it and choose that it is going to define us. We were all about, okay, who am I? What am I here for? Who do I need to be? It wasn't about being someone else. Some people say, fake it till you make it. I kind of question that. Do we fake it? Do we make it? Is it something we do? I guess, it's that journey, whatever the journey looks like for everyone, whatever works. And I do
Mm.
remember I had to, okay, if I'm going to get up and speak, I will have to embody a speaker to get strong, to be able to tell my story. So, and it also being mindful of those around us. As you said, you were mindful of those who were around you, who had their heads in the sand, but you were just going, you know what, we have to take notice of those who are around us. Are they supporting us? And we also can use them as an observation, going, okay, I know what that looks like. I know where I'm at, and I know where I want to go. So it is about looking for those who we can connect with, who are, such as yourself, who are walking the walk, who have journeyed, and I understand now, today, as a 42-year-old, I think I'm 42-year-old woman, that yes, we listen to those who have walked the walk, that they have great wisdom, because why continue the suffering if there is wisdom already there that can help us? If I'm 21, how I wish that I was, when I was 21, that I had someone there to be able to say, hey, look, you don't have to drink every night. You don't have to give your body to whoever. You don't have to get in that relationship, and you don't have to think about suicide, or, so I think that the message is there, that we have walked that walk. There are many who have walked the walk, who have walked that walk of healing, and everyone is different, but the hurt is the same. And to heal that hurt, and as you said, connecting to that divine creator, and trust, which is a huge thing for us, isn't it? It's like, how do I trust what I don't see when everything I've seen has hurt me? But trusting in that space, that yes, the bad has happened, but that means the rest is going to be good. And we can choose as adults to actively allow that to happen in our lives, based on our choices, the words we speak, how we share that space with others, which you absolutely just beautifully do, Kristina. And I just thank you so much for everything that you have shared today. You have such great wisdom, and I am so grateful that, absolutely, words cannot express how grateful I am for you. And I truly, truly honor and appreciate, I'm grateful to God for that. He has introduced us together and connected us together. And in that space, that we can support and uplift each other, and that we can be part of the community of those who understand the importance of lifting others, and not tearing each other down, because it is out there. The other day I was told, oh, you like the spotlight. And I said, you know what? I actually don't. I'd prefer to run and hide and lay down in bed, and but because of what has happened, give me another topic. Great. Who wouldn't want to be talking about something else? But if I could talk and bring attention to something else, how great. But if I walk away from my calling of doing this and sharing the stories of survivors, and holding that community, that space, then it would stay hidden. And so beat me down, try to beat me down by saying I like the spotlight, because, and there are people out there who do that. And I'm just thinking, wow, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Basically,
it's interesting because my brain always flips it around when I hear things like that. It's like I choose to hear, oh, so you want to be in the spotlight.
Exactly.
Because when they say, oh, you like the spotlight,
yes,
my younger version would have said, oh, and take that. Now the confident version says, oh, so you'd like to be in the spotlight too? Well, let me show you the way.
Exactly. That's right. It's like, come on, let me interview you then, or let me have, hey, let me support you to get there, because that's what we're here for. I get it. We were there.
Yeah.
So.
And that's that shield. That's the shield that I was talking about, that you start flipping it around, where you start to see the psychology, you see the projection, and you can either choose to respond one way or help them or whatever it is, but you start to receive it into here in a different way, rather than taking it in the way that it was intended. You're flipping it around, because you never know whether, if you posed a positive question and you challenge them, if they were ripe for the change, that could be the catalyst for their change. Absolutely. But if we took it personally or were insulted, whatever, it'll just keep being perpetuated. So I always say, be the bigger person, lead the way. If not me, who? If not now, when?
Exactly. We've got to call it out. We got to call it out, and I like to see it as turn it into glitter. It's like, it was black, but turn it into glitter, and that brings that spiritual sort of connection, that it's like, I am not going to respond to this in the human way, but in the very spiritual, divine way of turning it into glitter, and let me love you and support you and compassionately just hug you and love you. So,
Well, do you know what's really interesting? If you really want the glitter to sparkle really well, you have to turn on the light.
Yes.
It's not going to shine bright in darkness.
No, that's
so. Right. When you respond with a dark energy back, you will not ever create that. So if you have the knowledge and you are going forward, you then be the beacon of light, because that soul that is doing that, saying that, being that, they need what you have. Absolutely. So to me, it's like, you have to arrive at this point where you're so comfortable with your past that you know that where you are currently in your present is far more powerful than anything you've ever experienced before.
Absolutely.
And so therefore there's nothing that you're still human. Absolutely. And you might catch it for a moment, but then you release it when you pause, and this is why I often say, try not to be too busy in life. The busier you are, you can't pause to respond in the most intelligent, healing, soulful way, right? You can't.
No.
And it could be for your colleagues, it could be to your boss, or it could be to your workers, to your children, whatever it is. Like, slow down enough that when you hear the trolls, the negative, the naysayers, you can use your wisdom to respond and breathe and give healing into their life. You haven't gone through what you've gone through to act and be what you used to be or what you were created at that point. You have way past transgressed that. You can't return back to that vomit. You can't do that. You have risen from the ashes. You have done the work. You are going places. Everything you do from now on is done in the aspect of light, love and light, compassion and light. And so therefore, even if you have to close your eyes in that moment, take a breath, pause from it before you respond, and then go, do I want to own this, or do I want to help them heal this? Absolutely. Show them something, It's just having a conversation in your head. And as a survivor, let me tell you something. To all you survivors out there, or even people that are still going through abuse, turn your abuse into a privilege. Because it isn't until you've been abused that you actually can gain the tools to be this compassionate person. They tried to rob us. In fact, we gained more. You gain with your life. And I just say to myself, every year that I live, I'm going to give back more and give back more and give back more until I have expired. And I'm going to make my life so much more worthy, much more worthy than those 10 years of living hell. I will definitely do something greater. And that way you will honor your life far beyond the things that were set up to take and rule and destroy your life. And you owe it to yourself to do that. And that is my mission, is to empower every survivor out there. If I can do it, you can do it. And I'm sure there are worse atrocities than my 10 years of hell. I'm sure there are much greater things. But you know what? It's the way we deal with them. It's the way we deal with them. So, and this is why I'm so comfortable talking about this, because I used to hide from it, thinking that it would destroy my brand. It will destroy how, people think of me. I spent so many years hiding through fashion, creating this visage, and now I realize that, you can't just do the outside anymore. I got to a point where I have to, if I'm doing signature style branding, it's about the whole person, the inner soul, the inner being with the outer being. And this was my way of saying, you won't beat me on this. I'm going to do far greater things than the abuse that I've received.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I did.
And that's such a beautiful thing. It really is turning it and using it for good. When we can go,
Yes.
as you said, it's like, because some people will be like, what do you mean it's a privilege? It's like, darling, when you get to the point of healing, you will be able to see that, that's something I always say. I said, it sounds funny and people will think it's just crazy that I am grateful for my experiences, because I am, that we have been able to, and we have insights that others don't, and that empathy of understanding the suffering, that is great human connection, to be able to stop and understand the hurt of somebody and to be able to do something about it. That is taking it to that next level, and not just allowing the fear. And I always say that obviously there has been a huge reason why we were preyed on, was because, there was that fear of what we are capable of doing, but we've overcome and we've stepped up and forward and into our calling and our purpose and speaking the truth, because it's what we're meant to do. So we are going to take what they thought or it thought was going to shut us down and to stop us in our tracks, and go, you know what? No, we don't think so. Good always wins. Love always and will always conquer all. So, and that's the truth, and that brings that solid foundation of to be able to stand on, knowing that we aren't alone in this walk, and that we are guided for greater good. And to support others and be that presence, as you said, and not allow the ego to step forward and take that place. But understanding, as you said, when we have somebody who may cause us harm and say something that is negative, that is a reflection of themselves and their mindset, it's understanding that it's their walk, it's their hurt that they're projecting out to the world, which we understand as a survivor. We've walked that walk where we reacted or may have done something that wasn't kind and compassionate. And so there's that, again, that empathy and understanding, but allowing the ego to, not to speak or to support or to, to answer with the ego in the forefront, but with love and gentle kindness and compassion. Knowing that it's just somebody just asking for help, but just in a different way. And survivors.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful, Kristina. Thank you so much for your sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate everything that you have shared today. I know that it is going to touch hearts. It will reframe someone's thinking. It'll change their perspective, and it'll bring new perception. And I just, send you love and blessings in everything that you do. I will share Kristina's details in the description. So if anybody would like to reach out to Kristina and see how she can support you in your walk and just feeling beautiful and elegant and within and internally and externally, her details will be there. So thank you so much for joining us again today, Kristina. But before we go, just one message that you want to share. I know you've shared lots, but what is one most powerful message that you can share right now for a survivor who is out there, who is still scared, whether they're a young child or they're a grown woman or grown man who is scared, who is worried? What can you share to them to speak up and to start healing?
The first thing that comes to mind is that we now live in an age where we are believed. and that you can speak up and own your voice. And if something is happening, the first place to start is to say what is going on. Open your mouth and go, this is what's happening to me. And that starts the ball rolling into seeking help, having support, and being redirected. So you never need to suffer alone. The age of silence and not speaking out or not being believed is over. There is so much going on in the world today that we are listening and we can see. All you need to do to stop the suffering is to speak up and speak out, and we will hear you. Someone connected to this community or around you, there is enough with the Me Too movement that it started. There is enough out there that you will be believed and you will be helped. I believe that there is enough compassionate people starting communities and help groups. There is enough people out there that will swoop you up and help you and redirect you.
Absolutely.
So speak out.
Beautiful,
Yes.
Kristina. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Empowered Survivors TV, where the truth is told because it is time to heal. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.